Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Stream live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommie Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis, and I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. And I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommie Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
What's up, T? What's up? What's up, baby?
Oh, man, it's been good. It's been good. I'm glad to be here this morning.
As well, man.
Oh, man. How was your week? Let's start with you. You always throw it to me.
I appreciate that. Tommie, I had a good week, man. I was with a client, 1440 Foods, and we were sort of wrapping up the fifth in our series, the 5 essential learnings, and really preparing their leaders to focus on empathy, perspective taking, psychological safety, creating a sense of belonging, and creating inclusive workplaces. And they've done a great job with this, Tommie. They're really utilizing these skills on a regular basis out in the workforce and making a difference.
Yeah, that's good to hear, Eric. And on my end, two things when we think about different or diverse conversations. One, I've been working with a number of clients this week who've been focused on their values or their guiding principles.
Right.
So really doubling and tripling down on who we are as an organization. Because some of my clients have found that the employees, not all, but some employees have kind of wavered away from integrity, away from customer service, away from honesty. They've wavered from that.
Right.
And the CEOs and the executive leadership team members have said, no, let's get back on path and get back to our guiding principles. Personally, Eric, I've had one of the better weeks this week because I literally had multiple times this week I could just rest. I wasn't thinking. I was keeping negative energy out of my space.
Excellent.
Even to today, as I shared with our producer, Lydia, that I implemented, and I'm going to consistently implement different techniques and skills of meditation.
That's excellent.
So driving in this morning, I intentionally, when I got in the car, wanted to decompress, played some music, some meditation music, so I can free my mind and my body of negative energy.
Right.
And so I fervently fought against it, and because a lot of stuff is happening at work and personal life, etc. But I'm having those private, intimate, necessary conversations with myself so I remain balanced, regardless of where everyone else is, because I cannot help balance someone else by way of consulting, coaching, training. I can't do any of that if I'm not equally balanced in my own life.
Tommie, I love that. And let me tie that into my own, where I'm at right now as well. So our show last week was the Calm Within the Storm. And I'll tell you, Tommie, that I said to you when I went to Erie, Pennsylvania to speak to this company, do the keynote address, I freaked out the morning of and said, oh my goodness, this speech ain't even good. And I looked at the paper and I was almost saying, like, where's the beef? And what God showed me was that the beef was not in the paper. It was in me. And it was in God's anointing and God's direction and God's ultimate plan. And so sometimes all we have to do is rest in the plan of God. And so I can tell you that business is crazy right now. My life in many ways is kind of crazy right now. But God is helping me to get this calm within the storm, because freaking out is only a concession that our God is not powerful enough to care about us and to carry us through whatever situations that we're in. So community, what Tommie and I want to say to you this week as we start, we got a guest we're going to bring on here in just a second. But this notion of calm within the storm, that's not just a show that we did. That has to be a way of life for you. And I think the calm comes when you recognize what your purpose is, and that things that happen in this life, some of the best things are not necessarily in your control. So don't freak out. Don't get too high or too low. Just put your faith in God, the direction and the way that he's prepared you, the purpose that he's given you. Utilize that, and don't allow all the drama around you to throw off your equilibrium. So, Tommie, I'm so glad to hear that that's what you were doing, preparing, coming in. I see the smile on your face. I feel the positive energy. And we are now going to bring to the stage Sherry Sims, our guest for today.
Good morning, Sherry.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. So glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Right. We've been talking about this for a while. We are glad to have you join us on Diversity Conversations. You and I talked about this recently at the Black Tech Week. We sat down and got sort of reacquainted. And really, I love the things that you're doing professionally. I love who you are as a person personally. And so what I'd like to do is just have you start by just introducing yourself to our community, our global community, by just talking about the people, the events in your life that have made you who you are.
Absolutely. Let's see. I'll start off with saying, look, grew up in Oklahoma City. So I'm a Southwest girl, grew up around all those tornadoes, Tornado Alley, and survived those. Actually have experienced going through one before as well. Really, honestly, I am just I call myself a woman who is grassroots at heart, if that makes sense.
Okay.
A corporate gal with grassroots, grassroots movement. And that's how I like to move. I like to be on the ground and touching and feeling and being able to help impact from a level that is organic. And so I think that's part of growing up and watching my grandmother make, banana pudding from scratch and going back.
That's my favorite dish. I can do that one. I do that with my grandmother's recipe.
Yeah, and seeing her take the fish and skin it and take out, and just watching her do all those things and putting all the stuff in what she used to call the slop bucket, right? For the pigs and things like that, which really helped to mold and shape me. And so one thing that a lot of people do not know is, even though I'm from Oklahoma City, I spent the first 12 years of my life, I grew up in Baltimore, which is where my stepfather is from. And so I had an opportunity, and to me, it was a blessing because it gave me an opportunity to have a little bit more of what it feels like to understand how we move as Black people on the East Coast, and then moving into that space of in the Southwest, right? Mm-hmm. And moving into the true country where we had dirt roads, where my grandma was on dirt roads, and understanding what that country life was like too from that perspective. So that really helped me to understand how both sides work, from the city and also from the country. And I think that helped me to broaden my perspective, and it really became useful as an adult. Mm-hmm. So I pride myself on that. So part of my values comes from both. I'm a city girl at heart, though. I'm not gonna lie. I need a gas station close by. I need a grocery store around the corner.
Right.
I love to go home.
Right. You need those amenities at close range.
I need them close range. Yes, they need to be close range for me.
Talk about some of the values that your grandmother instilled in you. What is it that you saw in her that you think you retain today?
I will say the most profound thing I ever heard her say that stuck with me, and I had a lot of older cousins. My mother was one of 12 children, next to the baby, and so I see my cousins do some things, and she would tell them. She said, she talked about what was saying again. She said, "You live fast, you die young." Mm. And when she said that, I was like, "Oh," and I understood that. Understood what that meant around not just lifestyle, but aging. And just living how you live your life. And so I took that to heart. And I really was very mindful as I became an adult, how I wanted to live, who I wanted to be around me, how I wanted to absorb around the things and learning from the people around me. So I learned a lot by watching other people's mistakes in my family.
Well, let's just a minute. Live fast, die young.
Yeah.
That was prophetic. In terms of what our young people are dealing with today. Mm-hmm. We are seeing right now that it looks like young people are living fast, and they are dying young.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so that principle is one that we need to be able to get over to them.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Yeah, that was very profound for me when she said that. I was like, I immediately understood. And so I understood that even the females that were in my life, I knew who I wanted around me, who I didn't. It was important for me to be on a track that where I could, well, I wanted to be able to look like not my age, because we know, but it was important. It really was profound for me. It changed how I made choices about the relationships I established as I got older. Yeah. I love that.
That's good. Our community this morning, Sherry, is chiming in. The right question, Roger Miller. These are all the usual suspects. And there are many, many more. As Eric mentioned, our community is global from multiple countries, multiple states in the U.S., and multiple cities. And so as you are now, may I ask, what city are you in right now?
I'm in Cincinnati, Ohio, exactly where you are.
All right.
I'm local too.
Local, indeed. So if you would tell us a little bit more about, and those who don't know, Sherry Sims is the founder of the Black Career Women's Network. You can go to her site later on in the show. We'll be able to share some more information about how to really get in touch with Sherry and the network. But bring us up to speed of what Black Career Women's Network is.
Yes, we are a professional development agency, and we support Black women in their professional growth. We focus on the career mastery framework that we focus on with women and Black women. I'll tell you that story of why. I coach all women, but there is a specific thing that I found throughout my journey. When it comes to Black women, we focus on 4 pillars. One is self-awareness, professional growth, workplace mastery, and career management. And we touch on those 4 pillars because we come into our careers with a different type of mindset that sometimes can either accelerate our careers or stall it out. And so there's other nuances that we need to understand to navigate that. And what I have come to find is that we can have as many degrees as we want. We are the highest educated group of women, if you think about how many degrees we hold, but sometimes success is stalled for us because it takes more than education to be able to navigate the workplace, navigate careers. I don't care what industry you're in today. It's just a different mindset you need to have. And what equates to success is not always education. So we have specific barriers that we still have to overcome, but we need to realize what those are. And what we do is help you to gain the tools to be able to navigate that. And yeah, that's pretty much what we do in a nutshell. And again, I work with all women, but when we're working with BCWN, I do something we call culturally attuned coaching. So it's our voice, our language, what we need to understand, how we need to think as Black females in the workplace, and understand how to work with our counterparts who do not look like us, and how they think and how they move and how they define success and how they navigate that, and being clear about what we need in order for us to thrive outside of credentials and, just working hard.
Right. Let me jump in here. So our children, I've got 4 children, and I think in many ways we have sheltered them. That wasn't our plan, but in many ways, the way that we brought them up sort of made them feel free and like they could do anything that anybody else in the world can do. And so my daughter, she went to corporate America with an MBA, and she worked at the first company, and she was coming out of the gates like gangbusters. And everywhere she's ever been, if I just put the pedal to the metal, I get rewarded for that. People recognize me from the private school that we put her in to the public school that she graduated from the basketball teams that she played on. She felt confident that I can do whatever I need to be able to succeed. And she had never really run head first into the barriers that bias can sometimes bring. So the first job was a shock to her that I'm doing my big one. I'm out here getting it done. And now people are jealous of me and not supportive and backstabbing me. My customers all think I'm the best thing in the world, but the people that I answer to don't feel the same way. So she left there, went to another company, same kind of experience. And I think there for a minute, she was really discouraged with corporate America and was of the mindset, maybe I don't even want to do this. And finally, she's landed at Coca-Cola and she's in the right place. What would you offer to young women that are going into the workplace now that feel like they should be free, that they shouldn't have to deal with all these obstacles? What advice do you have to them?
Yeah, first, keep the mindset of being free. And when you don't never want that to be taken away from you, because you have freedom of choice, freedom of being able to move and go where you want to elevate the career that you envision for yourself in that way. So you need to keep that mindset of freedom. What you need to start to adopt is a mindset of understanding workplace personalities and skill sets you need to navigate the complexities of how individuals in the workplace think. And you and I, we all know, as DEI professional, me former, but you all still in the thick of it, thinking about how bias impacts, the trajectory of an individual in the workplace, the behaviors, recognizing the behaviors that comes along with that, and being able to navigate that, having strong communication skills and the ability to advocate for yourself. And then knowing if you get to a place to where it's not working, being strong enough to know and knowing your self-worth to be able to walk away from that role and find another role somewhere else where you are supported and where you are empowered and where you can thrive. So it's a mindset, right? We have to understand that we don't have to stay here and take this. Yeah, I may need to pay my bills. I need a job. But again, it's more than just being able to have that education and the experience, the complexity of that, and being able to recognize when you're not being valued versus I'm trying to work through that to continue to prove yourself to someone who doesn't recognize your value. That's exhausting. And it can't eat away from your self-esteem, how you even maybe start doubting how you're showing up, So I always say, keep that mindset of freedom, because if you understand that, if you know that you have options, you're going to continue to recognize your worth. And then you're going to also start creating an exit strategy. You can go somewhere else. So it's just a combination of things. I always believe that there's a saying, and I think I shared this with you when we had a conversation. I said, I got my oh hell no's. When I started having those oh hell no's, it's time to go.
Right.
It's time to go. But yeah, we have to walk into these companies, into these roles, understanding the individuals that we work with, human nature. And I think for me, when I talk to women in the network, and when I'm also working with other women from all walks of life, when I talk about human nature, as an HR professional, we are trained to understand human nature because we're working with behaviors and people all the time. So I have another perspective in how I look at engagement with individuals in the workplace. And I have this training that I do, and I break down individuals in the workplace by 7 characters. And I identify them in these 7 characters, and this is how I understand how to work with them. And so that way, when I do that, my spotty senses will go off, because as Black women, we also have to work in these spaces with the spirit of discernment. We have to recognize specifically how these individuals that we engage with will impact our trajectory and what we're trying to accomplish and achieve, in not only in the specific role I'm in, but how this can also impact my career overall. Because you do have people who talk to each other in the industries. So you got to protect that overall brand, and not just in that company. But when you're ready to move somewhere else, you need to make sure your name is clear and reputable when you're ready to move somewhere else as well.
Right. Let me jump in with this, Tommie, and then if you have a question. So there are 2 things that I want to ask you about. Number one, I have been enjoying watching the WNBA. So they're in their tournament right now. We watched Cincinnati's own Kelsey Mitchell be in the semifinals, take the defending champions all the way to Game 5, and then she got injured, and she's doing really well now, doing much better now. But I was listening to somebody talk about Asia Wilson. Now, Asia plays for the Aces. She's a 4-time MVP in the WNBA. And I was talking to somebody recently, and they said that they described her as being arrogant.
Okay.
And what I thought about was that men in sports that have that swagger, that are champions, that are MVPs, whether it was Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, or LeBron James, we kind of like that swagger when we see it on them. but we don't seem to like it as much when we see it on women. And the other thing I would say is that I think that part of the challenge with Black women is not simply racism that they might be facing, but also sexism.
Oh,
and I find that sexism that they experience sometimes is oftentimes at the hands of Black men. And so talk about the double standards that you're seeing, the unique challenges that Black women face that even Black men aren't aware of.
Yeah, I think part of that, and you're right about the sexism piece, because when Black women are really devalued immediately without you having to say it in the workplace, so we're working backwards to walk in and prove ourselves, and we can have 15 years experience, but we're still walking in having to prove the value of who we are versus our counterparts, right? And so when you put the sexism on top of that, not only from black men in the workplace, but also as from any other male as well, you have to be smart enough to pick up on those cues, right? And the quickest way to pick up on those cues is to pay attention to how you're being treated versus your peers. When you make a mistake, how are you treated versus your peers? If you are meeting your goals and both of you are equally performing well, what's the outcome of the reward? When you're in a meeting and you are giving your input and value on, whether it's an update on the projects or whatever it is, and how are they paying attention? Are they responding to what you're saying, or are they supporting what you're saying, or is it, you're kind of just being overlooked? That's great, thank you for that update, and you're moving on. How are they responding and providing support to you? And sometimes we're not paying attention to those things, or we feel it, but we're afraid to speak up. So again, when you're talking about specifically around sexism piece, sometimes men tend to, and I've seen this, I've been in a room full of C-suite men to provide an update on a project, and it's like every word's coming out their mouth is MF this and the F word and all, and I'm thinking, am I in the locker room? My good, what I'm saying? And then when it's time for me to speak, it's like, I'm sharing my piece, and then it's like, okay, next. And I'm like, did you just hear what I said? And I've even had to come back and say, can we pause for just a second? Do you all have any questions? I want to make sure that I'm providing what you need. You all are awful quiet in here. Can I get some feedback? And I've even had a VP after a meeting say, Sherry, thank you for standing up for yourself, because we can get a little rowdy in the room. So you have to not be afraid to speak up, or because sometimes we may think about what's going to be the consequence going to be if I push back to that VP. Well, there shouldn't be any consequence if you are sharing information that's going to be beneficial to everyone in the room.
Right. I've got a curious question here, Sherry, so when you come into an organization, when you come into corporate America, sometimes you might be able to discern the isms, the racism and the sexism that are there. When do you take it on and fight it? When do you use strategies to sort of work around it? And when do you decide maybe this is not the culture? Because I would say to you that too often, if we're not careful, we identify the isms and then we just say, I don't want to have any part of this. Yeah. But I actually think that we have a skill set that can help navigate around it and through it and still find success. And then sometimes we won't be able to do that, and we need to get out of there.
Oh, absolutely.
How people determine how they should be looking
at repetition of how often it happens. How often is it occurring? If it's something that just happened, you should address it, right? I have this way that I, teach women to approach it. And I say, hey, I just, observed something, or you just made a comment to me, or maybe I observed you say it to someone because maybe you witnessed it. I'll say, I just want to talk about what just happened. Can we talk about this with mutual respect and understanding? Let's set the conversation up for us to be able to discuss this as two mature professionals. Now, if it's an isolated incident, address it, and then also try to set the expectation of what you'd like to see happen moving forward. Now, if it happens again, it's okay for you to also address it again, but maybe document this and be mindful and start to pay attention to see if it's a pattern of behavior. whether it is by the individual or maybe there's something within the culture that is a hidden workplace rule or a norm that just doesn't feel right. It's dysfunctional. And if you start to see a pattern and then you also have advocated for yourself, you've spoken up, you've brought others involved to help to resolve the issue or the pattern of behavior, or if it's an issue within the culture, we know we can't change culture. But if you're able to just speak on what's happening and you're championing for change and nothing happens, then your last resort really should be to consider leaving, because that way you've already seen a pattern that's not changing and you've exhausted all of what you can do to create a place that's healthy for you to continue to work in and being able to grow. And, if it's not happening, you need to move on. That's the part where we get stuck, is because we think we can fight and change it. And then what we're doing now is we're starting to become stressed. We're focusing more on trying to resolve this particular issue versus I've fought a good fight. Maybe it's time for me to move on. We got to know when to fold, but you don't fold quick. You got to be able, because if you do not, as an individual, especially as a female, understand how to navigate, have strategies to advocate for yourself and speak up early, and not be afraid of being able to confront someone and make it clear that I'm asking for, if you want to confront someone about a situation or an issue, and when you talk about it and you say, this is how I'd like to resolve this moving forward, or this is the outcome I'd like to see us have from this conversation. And then once you do that, your next thing you should be saying to them is that, and what I am expecting from you is for your behavior not to change or for it to improve. And I'm not expecting to see retaliatory behavior from you. Because when you start to say that I recognize that as a possibility you might switch on me and start to be more retaliatory, then we're going into another lane of a conversation. But when you let them know that I don't want to see you switch it up on me, you calling it out immediately.
Well, document that. It feels like we're living in a time when people don't care if they offend you.
It doesn't matter. You still gotta let them know. You gotta let them know.
That's what I did. So my question to you is, how much work would you recommend that women of color put on the front end? In other words, before they even take the job, how much work should they do, investigatory work around the organization?
You can only do so much. You can only do so much. You ask the right questions, right? When you're in that interview process, you research and see what kind of reputation do they have, whether it's going on Glassdoor, asking other individuals. But I always teach women that when you accept a new role, you can do as much research as you can, but you still don't know what you're walking into, because those hidden workplace rules or those norms, those are things you necessarily can't see on the outside of an organization until you get in, is when you understand how that culture is navigated and what you really need to be able to adapt to that culture. And your values, the values they have on the website or in the handbook may be okay, but that may not be how the values they have operating in that organization. So you got to pay attention to those workplace rules. I mean, those hidden workplace rules immediately. And I always say within that first 90 days, I have a list of things you should be trying to assess when you go and walk into that place in 90 days. You need to look for your allies. You need to look for the gossiper. You need to look for the person who is the go-to person. You need to look for the sabotager. You need to look for that, who is the leader who truly is influential, because they may not, the real influencer may not have the title. They may, the one that's really, really impacting that culture in a way that leadership is allowing it just to run amok. So you have to go in and pay attention to all of those things fairly quickly. And I had an individual lady say, "That's just so exhausting." I said, "It might be exhausting, but guess what? That's going to determine whether you're going to be here in 90 days or whether you can decide this is where you want to stay for 5 years." I
have a lot of questions that come to mind, both in my own organization, which is 95% female, and then in other organizations, particularly in nonprofits and education, where the vast majority of the workforce and leadership in some cases are female. So my question, one, again, I have a list of questions here. Question is, how do you advise, or what do you share with women who are having these cultural challenges with other women, either their peers or their managers or supervisors are women, and literally it's female against female conflict, just like it could be, ethnic group versus, same ethnic group. What advice do you give to a woman who's like, my problem is this gatekeeping woman that's my boss?
Yeah, the gatekeeper is one of those 7 characters that you have to watch for that I was talking about in the workplace. I didn't get to all of them, but yeah, that's a challenge, because a gatekeeper, depending on depending on their behavior, it can be classified even as a workplace bully, depending on the behavior. So you have to look at what is it they're truly trying to. What's the agenda? What are they trying to do? Are they just trying to withhold everything because they just think there can only be one? Or is it that they're, they maybe have the what I call the leadership power of coercive power, where they really want to be manipulating and controlling and withholding everything. Working with someone like that is very tough. You definitely need to understand how to navigate them, but you definitely need to document everything working with someone like that. And you also have to be very clear about the expectations of both of you and document that. So be clear about how do they want to be communicated with. How do they need for all of the, what they need for you to be delivered and what time and what manner? And even sometimes depending on what their agenda is, do you need to even be in the room with them alone? Because that might be detrimental as well too. You have to pay attention to what is the gatekeeper's agenda. And once you figure out what that is, then you need to kind of move accordingly to be able to protect yourself when you're working with them. Well, that's probably one of the most toxic behaviors in the workplace, that gatekeeper.
That's good. Sherry, we'd like to get in our community because they're weighing in.
Let's go back to
Roger. Yeah, let's go back to Lydia, let's go back to Roger's first question about men and how much teaching you should do. How much open-mindedness are men being taught without losing their masculinity? Not exactly sure what he means there, but that's a question from a man, former military man, got daughters. What are you hearing in the question, and how might you respond?
I think what I'm hearing the question is, how open do you need to be when you're working with women, maybe women, whether they're individual contributors or leaders in the workplace. And I think it's they have to also be open enough to listen to, how do I, enrich in my relationship with my female peers or leaders, or what do I need to understand about how they think and feel as leaders? Because of course they always say women are the feelers and they have the emotions, but it's not necessarily that. It's just, we know that, understanding how men think in the workplace and women is important, but also too is the sensitivity of being able to be mindful about the individual's leadership style, how they prefer to be communicated with, how they want to have their voice heard in meetings, or how they want to be able to impact the work that they do as well. It's just about being mindful and being open enough to comfortable enough to ask those questions. And you and I had this conversation. We know this, when Me Too was out, it was like, I'm not talking to her in the room by herself. You know what I'm saying? I want somebody else there. But it's just being able to ask the right questions to have that individual feel comfortable enough too. And here's the thing, when it comes to working with men, you have, and I don't want to make this necessarily about race, but the one thing I have learned is that you have Latino women and white women and Black women. We do have different things that we think about and how we approach things in the workplace. And just being able to understand that also, and approaching that from a more broader perspective is helpful for men too. And I think that's, the more you can understand how culturally we think and how that comes into and how that plays into how we show up at work, you're just being sensitive to those different cultural references and how that impacts how people show up in the workplace.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Eric.
Let's bring up Dr. Byron White. He's got a question, and then we'll go to Tommie from here. So Byron White says, good morning. Love you, Byron. So glad to have you checking in with us. And he says, checking in from Charlotte. This is informative for those of us who are not Black women, but managing Black women. So what advice would you have, Sherry, for Black men who are managing Black women in order to ensure that they're supportive, and not an obstacle?
Agreed. I like that. And Byron, thank you for asking this. I think when you are managing Black women, I think it's good for you to be able to be mindful to understand that the path that they navigate in the workplace will not be the same as their counterparts. And when you're able to acknowledge that, we're not talking about special treatment. This is about you being able to be mindful enough to in creating psychological safety for that individual to be heard when they talk to you as a Black female, because they want that and they need that, because when we're in these spaces with people who do not look like us, which we're a lot of times it's just us, right? We want to be able to know that I can kind of let my hair down a little bit, and we're not talking about from the urban perspective, but just let my hair down enough to be comfortable to share my opinion, my voice, and kind of my perspective of how I'm navigating this space and the challenges I'm facing. And who better to talk to about that than someone who looks like you, if you have that opportunity, because you necessarily can't share that with your counterparts who don't look like you. You kind of have to have a mentor, a peer, or someone outside of that space to be able to just share those concerns with, and then being able to go back and navigate that. So you don't need to do anything different, but just make it safe for them to talk to you about those things, maybe lend an ear, and even a Black male perspective, because the Black women, they like to hear that Black male perspective in the workplace. That's important for them to understand that too. So give your perspective, even maybe give some tips on how they navigate that, and be open and transparent with each other in that. And you don't necessarily say I'm holding you accountable, but just be real about it.
Yeah, I think that Byron's point is important from my perspective. As I mentioned before, 95% of my employees are women.
Mm-hmm.
And I am, as I'm listening to the conversation, really want to hear back from you. At times, always, I have a bias about anything, right? It's a bias from my gender, bias from my socioeconomic status, bias from my education level, etc. And so there are certain words that I unintentionally use when I am talking and working with women that I don't use with men. I'll give you one word, for example. I very seldom say to the men I work with how might I support you? What do I need to do to support you? I never say that. I will often say, what do you need from me? Or here's what I expect from you. It's really a directive, right? Or something like that. With women, I may tend to use a word like, how might a man support a woman? That in and of itself is a bias. If we're not, support is the inference that women cannot maintain themselves on their own. And so therefore we're asking, how might I support you? When we're dealing with a man, it's here's what I expect from you, or what might I do for you? It's an action. So what other biases or biased behaviors have you seen men do that are detrimental to the psychological safety of women?
Okay. Yeah. First, I want to back up and say how you address it, saying, what do you need from me? And I was like, that's exactly what I say. I'm like, okay, right. that's the direct. I'm direct too. So and I teach women to be direct in that way. What do you need from me? Or this is what I need from you, or this is what I expect from you. Commanding that with authority, right? And doing it with confidence. But I do think that when you are, when I think about some of the things that I have heard and seen, it is a little bit more sensitivity around that. How can I support you? Some women like that. Some women are more directive and say, this is what I need. So I think it's about the woman really being clear about how she wants to be addressed, or what she wants to, how she wants this relationship to go. And you don't find that a lot of women who are still trying to navigate this space, or they're kind of on this track of, this is where I want to go. I'm scared to speak up and say something because I may be reprimanded. And you just cannot be afraid of being able to advocate for yourself in a way that's going to help you to really bring out the best of who you are in the workplace. That's not going to happen if you're afraid to open your mouth and say what you need from that individual. Right. So with men, and I've even had an individual for me that he says, well, Sherry, are you okay? He says, you're not saying much. And I said, well, to be honest with you, I'm not quite sure what I need to say, because everything that you asked for me is I'm clear on that. Right. And so, we as individuals have to understand what our communication style is, period, whether it's a man or a woman, and be consistent in how that is. So take the bias out. But if you see a bias, do not be afraid to address the bias. So I hope I was clear on that, because that's really the key. The key is not being afraid to address the bias when you start to hear it or experience it, and stop being afraid of what you think the retaliatory behavior may come from you advocating for what you really want from that relationship.
Right. Let me take Tommie's thing to the next level, because I actually like the question, how might I support you?
Okay.
But I think there's a deeper thing underneath what Tommie has asked that I've seen now over the course of my career as a consultant and coach. Is if I don't give women the same kind of feedback that I'm giving men. In other words, if I sugarcoat or soft pedal it and not give them sometimes honest feedback, then that makes it more difficult for them to make the adjustments that are necessary to be successful. So how do we avoid that? Sort of the kind of interactions that don't allow men to give women honest feedback that would help them to be successful.
Yeah, I think part of it is looking at the individual, right? Not that they're just a female, but looking at the individual and how they want to be communicated to, how they want the communication to be, but also too, who are they personally? Because you may have an individual or woman that's like, hey, shoot it to me straight. I just need to give me the high level points or whatever, and they move on. And then you have other individuals who may need more information, may need a little bit more of the, how can I support you? Until they're able to start working a little bit more on being assertive or having a higher level of confidence. So you do have to look at each individual as an individual, and where their personality, communication style, and all of that, and maybe tailor a little bit to that. It's not about you changing who you are as a leader, but it is about being mindful and understanding about the different personalities and individuals, and being able to kind of just tailor a little bit or shift a little bit of how you work with each person. Because I can tell you, for me, I'm used to them C-suite guys. I'm like, okay, here you go, high level, bam, 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 and I'm out. I'm like, thank God I'm out the door. You know what I mean? Right. But you have others who need more detail, or they need to feel a little more level of that. So I agree with you too, Eric, that I think it is okay for you to say, how can I support you? Because you may have an individual who that's what they need to hear for them to feel like safe enough to open up and share what they really need from you.
Right. This is interesting. So the right question says, cultivating a culture of no advice giving helps balance the notion of patriarchy and parenting. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, why give advice unless they're asking for it, right?
Absolutely.
That doesn't need to be the approach anyway, because then they're looking for you for all the answers, and they may not even go back and execute it right. So that's not a healthy way to lead anyway. So, they need to learn how to be assertive and being able to, come, if they're coming to you with the issue, they should also be coming to you with the way that they're thinking about solving that problem too. And maybe asking you, well, maybe, hey, what do you think about me using this approach? So again, that because they've already done the work before they came to you and had the discussion around what the solution or approach they may take to solve it. So no, a leader should not be cultivating a culture of no advice giving, but at the same time, if they come to you, don't be above the fact that someone needs some support in advice. Be open to supporting that.
Here's what I've experienced as well. I've had the blessed opportunity to work in corporate America for a number of years with a multi-billion-dollar, multinational organization where the culture in and of itself was enormous. Mm-hmm. It would literally eat people up.
Ooh, yeah, I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you think of the Fortune 500 companies, those cultures will eat up men, eat up women, eat up the weak, as folks are trying to navigate and figure it out. And as they're trying to navigate and figure things out, then the goalpost is moved constantly.
Right. Oh, let's talk about that for a moment. Yeah, let's talk about that.
and that's my experience. And easily, as a consultant, we can advise, we can coach and all that good stuff. But at the end of the day, we're not in the thick of things.
Absolutely.
No, and I talk about, this is something I talk about called organizational shifts and drifts, which means that you can be at your job and you could be a high performer doing well, you have that likability with everything. But if you are not paying attention to how things are moving and changing within in that organization, you can actually not only get left behind, but you can become devalued because you're not paying attention to what is going on, because if new leaders are coming into the organization and they may not see, you may have been a rock star to the leader that just left. Right. Or, but they come in and they're like, I don't know you. And they keep hearing, oh, you're amazing. And you're this. And it doesn't mean they're valuing the rock star that others have seen you to be. You may have to start from ground zero with that individual, but that could also be that same individual who also may be using a strategy to push you out. So you have to be very careful about that. And like you said, when it comes to culture, it's changing all the time. So do you want to change with that culture, or is it time for you to move on? And I'm not going to say, there's a couple of organizations that I know that I work with females in, and just leaving that organization and moving on to another place, they have to reprogram themselves because they've been so embedded into that culture, right? And how it works. And then now what they have been taught no longer, it doesn't work in this new organization. So you don't want to be so bought into an individual's culture that where you lose who you are and what you're bringing to the table, to where and losing your ability to be adaptable to a new way to work and to showcase your skill sets and develop and cultivate new relationships, and making sure that you're still cultivating a career outside of the job that you're in. You don't get too lost in that workplace culture. Yeah.
Yes. So Sherry, real quick before Eric jumps in, Eric earlier had talked about the younger generation, the younger women, right? And my mind was actually on the more seasoned women. This is the woman that's 30, maybe 35 years into their career. And now they're in an organization that culturally it may not be a fit, but they're 60 years old. So not only is it gender bias, maybe racial bias, it's age bias. Yeah. So when they're stuck, they may have been in that particular company for 10 years, have some vested, time there, looking at their years of service and their runway, but it's still, this is not it. At the same time, they don't want to go into entrepreneurship, right? They want the stability of working and getting a steady paycheck, benefits, all that good stuff. So now that I'm 55 or 60 years old and I come to you as a Black woman or a woman in general, what do you tell me? Because I'm almost locked in as I'm trying to land this plane.
All of that.
Yeah. And and I see it a lot. It can be a tough place to be, especially if you're not open to entrepreneurship or being open to a new way of working. Because in this society now, there are different ways to work.
That's right.
Right? That's right. Outside of just your 9 to 5. Let's just be honest about that. Right. So do you have the type of personality that is open to that? I used to be early in my career because that was a thing. I think we all kind of in the same age group. So we understand what that meant to be when you got a job. You was like, I'm going to be here for 10 years. I'm going to be here for 20. I'm going to retire. We know now that should not be the language coming out of your mouth now about you're going to retire from somewhere.
Right.
However, what I do talk about now is that don't you stay too long. Right. And if you stay, you better make sure that you are moving in a place to where your power and positioning is leveling you to have that influence, to where even when that culture shifts, you're in a position to where you're the one that's helping that to help to create the influence and impact the culture and how it changes. Because it, just like you said, with the woman who's been there for 10 years, her positioning probably isn't even allowing for her to navigate to something else because she never strategically planned to move and elevate to that place to where she can now be in a place to where that impact and that influence is will help her to sustain that at that age. You have to have that strategy. You cannot say I'm going to be in this role for 10 years without.
This is interesting to me.
Yeah.
So So
it's a mindset and strategy. And this is, and the reason why I'm sharing this is because you don't hear Black women talk about this. And I truly, from what I have seen, I think this is important to navigate it that way, because if you do not put yourself in a position of power and influence, and the positioning is not right, you're going to be in that place where she is right now, because you did not position yourself right. You didn't think about strategizing your career in a way to help that movement. Movement is important. There's another saying I have: a success never stands still. So if you are standing still in the same role for 10 years with no movement, no elevation, you can be looked at as someone who's stagnant. And then I'm telling you, people, that positioning is critical when it comes to corporate America.
Let's talk about the positioning. We're going to talk about my company. Very quickly. Again,
I like
95%
I like it.
women. I will share with everyone that works for my company that no one is going to take my position while I'm in it. 30 years.
Surprise,
founder,
surprise.
president, and CEO. And so with that being said, in our performance evaluations, we have goals and objectives from an operational perspective. Then there's also professional or personal development opportunities, which I then do our best company-wise to ensure that we make those investments for our team members to improve and strengthen.
That's good.
And so with the being well, I'm being an advocate here, right? I have a seasoned female worker that works for me who has come across you as their coach, right? They love the company. They maybe even enjoy working for me. They absolutely love the work that we do, but they are struggling between, do they advance, which there's a low ceiling, if you will, or move on, et cetera. And you may give them very good advice to say, hey, keep your options open, be able to move. I, on the other end, I'm investing in the folks such that they stay with us. I'm not investing in them so they can be the best somewhere else. I want them to be the best here.
As you should.
Now we have possibly two different philosophies on the elevation, the advancement, the engagement of the person. So now, still being an advocate, now we have a conflict, right?
Yeah.
This woman is trying to do a power play on me. Now, this is a real story.
Okay.
Right? I'm just not naming names. Now, my employee is trying to do a power play on me, the founder, president, and CEO. And so I buckle down and say, oh, that's not going to happen. I want you to be great somewhere else, but you're not going to sabotage me and sabotage this whole company because you're trying to one up. And she says, watch me work you. What do you tell both of us? Because there was an outcome here, Sherry, right? What do you tell both of us? Now and this could be a woman to me or any other woman that's having this conflict, this progression conflict within their organization, that they're fighting the good fight. And they may even be better than their boss. But their boss is hunkered down to say, the fight is on. What advice would you give?
I think that you do have to be realistic about the organization you work in, whether it's small or large. And if your aspiration is to be a CEO, you may not be a CEO in your organization, right? Because you're a smaller organization. So in my mind, and I'm just going to kind of give you the scenario based on what you share with me. In my mind, as a woman, if I'm working for you and you are a smaller business, you're the CEO. Now, realistically, I should not really be thinking about going after what you have. If I want to be a CEO somewhere, then let me go ahead and create a plan to put myself on that track. This may not be the job I'm gonna land at, but while I'm here, I'm going to be the best I'm going to be in this role that I'm at with you and learn what I can, which means I'm here. I'm committed to this role. You know, it's okay for her to share her career aspirations with you, but let me back this up. First of all, what I heard from you, her behavior is absolutely toxic. So number one,
that's what I'm here.
Yeah, let me go back. Let me go back first before we talk about somebody who has real emotional maturity to understand what it means to have a career track. Let's talk about this individual, because to me, this individual is toxic and she got to go.
There you go. It's about gender at all. It's about character.
Yeah. So yeah, it's about character. You know, I just had this conversation with someone who's a CEO of an organization. They said, I don't hire for experience, I hire for character. And sometimes that is what a lot of companies forget about, is hiring for character. Because when you hire for character, you will more than likely, if you have the right type of values and principles in your organization, you're going to have a healthy workplace culture. And so when you don't, and so her intentions and how she's trying to navigate that is self-serving and sabotaging, and it's not creating psychological safety for you or the team that you're.
So I think that's great input, because if you look at the number of employees we have, right, a little bit south of 25 or so, that might put us in the category of a small business.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at our revenue, we're a big business.
Yeah,
so I believe she saw the revenue. If she can make $500,000 working for my company a year, that is comparable to working in the same position at a large Fortune 500 company.
But she's still missing a big point of how your culture is cultivated and how things move, how people move and grow, and how they're supported in your organization. It's okay for her to look at the dollars, but what she's missing a big component of how you have your how you have your culture set up, and or even the trajectory, the path that people can go on in your organization.
I think you make a good point, because again, looking at women, Black women in particular, if they're working for, again, a Fortune 500 company, those cultures are solid. If they're 200, 300 years old, and what we were talking about earlier is the woman having to, one, be clear on what she wants and what she's not going to tolerate, and understanding the culture of that company. Because I think that not just women, that a lot of folks believe that we can independently change the culture of the company such that we can
serves our own interest.
Achieve
and you wearing yourself out thinking you can do that. You wear yourself out.
With that.
Right.
Yeah,
and what I would
say, that is right.
Right. I to weigh in on this right here, what I would say is that as a business owner, my job is to hire great people and invest in them greatly. I want them to rise to the highest level of their talent, skill, and ability. Now, if at some point they outgrow the opportunity that I have here, I support them moving on. I mean, that's not what I'm most interested in. But if people want to do something that I can't offer them here, then I'm going to bless them to go do their own thing or do something somewhere else.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what I meant, honestly, when I said don't stay too long. What I mean by don't stay too long is that you need to be assessing if where you're staying, there's still a career track for you, or you've hit as far as you can go, right? And stop trying to, push yourself through something that really doesn't exist.
Right.
Or you're believing it's there. Yeah.
Right. Let me ask you this too, Cher. I want to make sure you get this to the community. So who are most of your clients? Are most of your clients corporate clients, or are they Black women? When you have it as a corporate client, is their leadership your client, or the people that you're working with? Help us to understand those. But more importantly, I want you to also help our community understand how they can take advantage of you and your skill set as individuals and maybe as managers or executives.
So we work with women who are, Black women from entry level, pretty much to mid-career, where they're like probably up to that VP, and they're like, I don't know what's next. Like you said, the track of I've been here 10 years now. I'm like, I don't know what's next. And they come for different reasons. Some are like, I want to understand how to navigate this now and get ahead of it. Because I'm like, okay, you smart. Come on in, because I'm like, we can get you set up real fast. And then you have some that come to me are like, I don't know what to do next, or some of them are even on the brink of filing the EEO, or seeking an employment law attorney. So it just depends on where they are. in that. And what I do is really assess where they are and what they need, and being able to give them the skill sets. And they have to be open. When I come, I tell myself, look, this is not, if you're not ready to hear the honest truth about how you maybe even contributed to where you are, then you may not be ready to work with me, because you have to be able to also look at what you've done and how you've impacted this, whether it's good or bad, and being able to be accountable for making those changes and shifts.
Right.
And so when we're working with these women, it's, we start out with assessments and we take them through. I always start with the self-awareness, and you see where you at on your values from everything. And then we start from there. Now, I also work with organizations if they have leadership programs. I'll come in as an executive coach, and I'll do facilitation and work with them in that capacity. If they're working with me for BCWN, everything I do is culturally attuned to understanding what it means to be a Black female in the workplace, and helping you to understand that. And sometimes I get the attitude when I ask them, how many degrees do you have? They're like, oh yeah, I got my PhD. That's good. But how far has I gotten you? And I had that real talk. You're looking at someone who started an HR career without a 4-year degree. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. And because what I did was went in and understood relationships and navigating leadership, and being able to do some of those things to help me to cultivate being able to get into those positions without the education. Because I come from an era where if you didn't have a degree, you wasn't having no kind of career. Right. And now that's different, because now they're going back to the way it should have always been, is that making sure you're looking at talent versus the education, because I was running circles around people who had the 4-year education.
Right.
Because but you have to know who you are and know the gifts and talents you bring to the table, and stand on that. As my daughter would say, stand on business, as she would say. Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to, but that self-awareness is critical to that, because if you're not paying attention to who you are, your strengths, and what you bring to the table, how are you going to speak to what your superpower is in the room if you don't know what it is? Mm-hmm. How are you going to talk about the value of what you bring if you don't know what your value is? Mm-hmm. And all you're doing is saying, I got a 4-year degree, and that's not your value.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
There's other things that you bring that you need to be recognizing about who you are and how you excel in what you do outside that 4-year degree, because it can't teach you how to navigate. It can't teach you how to advocate. It can't teach you how to get into that C-suite and have that conversation that you need to. It doesn't teach you how to have visibility. It doesn't teach you how to negotiate for that internal promotion.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Right.
You got me fired up over here.
Right. We have blown through this hour. I mean, we literally just blew through the hour. The right question says, we are the narrator of our own story.
Yes, we are.
That is what we have done here today. Mm-hmm. We have blown through this hour. You've provided us with some compelling insights and perspective. How can people reach you, Sherry, if they're interested in talking further and getting your coaching, either as individuals or within their organization?
Yes. And we do group and individual coaching, so you know that. So if you need one-on-one, and maybe you just need a strategy to work through something, or maybe you just need to put a whole career plan together, or you say, you know what, I need to get with Sherry and get my whole career life because I don't know what I'm doing anymore.
Right.
You can follow me at BCW. Well, follow BCWnetwork.com is our website. Our social media handle is BCW Network, and then you can follow me on social media handles at Hello Sherry Sims.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, we appreciate you. Tommie, you want to close us out?
I do it once again, community. Thank you for joining us. Every weekend, we've been blessed to have this conversation that is not over. We're going to have a part 2 and maybe a part 3 with Sherry Sims.
Oh, well, good. Thank you. I'm coming back, y'all.
Oh, yeah.
Watch out now. Watch out. Be careful what you pray for.
Be careful. Be careful. Again, thank you all very much again for joining us in another installment of Diversity Conversation.